Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I am your host, Brad Wakai, coming from Brooklyn, New York. And that is my co host, Tyson Gentry, coming to you from Missoula, Montana. And Tyson, we are coming off a huge weekend, one of our favorite weekends of the year in the U.S. Open. And we were out on the West Coast. So I think for you, it was interesting because normally you got to wake up early. You're finishing at like, what, 2 p.m. on a Sunday. Now for me, I'm waiting until like 10 p.m. so I can get these guys in so we know who wins this thing. It was definitely interesting.
I think that this is the only time of year basically that they're afforded that they can take over the PGA Tour and golf in general can take over the primetime sports slots without having to worry about anything else. So good on them. But at a certain point, dude, it was like these guys don't tee till 3:30 today. It's like I got to sit around and
Dude, 5:30 my time. I was
just
like, what?
ridiculous. And I mean, I'm watching everybody. I wasn't upset about that at all. But it was. I mean, poor Rickie comes out in his sunglasses, sponsored sunglasses, all that stuff. All of a sudden, he can't read the greens. Sun went down.
Yeah, well, he was wearing them all. He was wearing them all week. So I don't know. We'll
What's
talk
up with
about
the
Rickie.
angle that he has going on with him? I don't know if I like the straight
I
up
don't
and
know.
down
Maybe he
look.
doesn't get like those marks on like his temple though. Like that was the one thing I was thinking because normally like people have like those
Yeah.
sunglass marks in their temple. I was like, he probably doesn't get that. So, but I was noticing that too. But we got a lot to talk about. We'll talk about Rickie. We'll talk about some of the big names like Brooks, like Rahm, who really didn't contend. And obviously, we have two of the biggest names, Rory and Scottie, as well. But this was about Wyndham Clark. Like, Wyndham Clark was unbelievable this week. And for those who don't know him, he's been a talented guy for a long time on the tour. Like he has all the physical tools. It was just a mental game. And he's talked about it. And we're not going to go into that entire thing here. But if you're curious, go look it up. He very outspoken on hiring a sports psychologist and getting his coach to really help him out through this entire process. But I think you really saw the entire game that he has on display this week. Like he hits the ball extremely far. He's accurate. He's a great putter, especially they talk about all the time. Got that Rickie putter, and now all of a sudden, like the dude is just incredible. I mean, this was his coming out party.
It was awesome. I mean, everything that was 40 feet on the greens, he'd dump right into a little 3 foot bucket, go up there, clean it up. And I think this is the most important part of Wyndham Clark for me on Sunday, at least. He didn't he made somebody else have to go win the tournament, that's what you do when you're sitting in the driver's seat on the final day of a tournament. Roy McIlroy historically has never really been a very good chaser. Like he can come from 3 under to finish at 9 if the leader's at 11, right? But this isn't like Rory's going to go out there and shoot 65 today and make you work for it. He just stayed the course, stayed steady, watched Rickie kind of fall apart around him. Granted, there was no crowd noise, so it would have been hard to know if anybody else was making a move, but um, didn't really have to play outside of himself one time this entire week. And we said it here that like right around 10 was probably going to win this thing. We said that we thought Scottie Scheffler was going to go 69, 69, 69, 69. And that's not quite the way it worked out. But the short game was crazy. The driving iron was crazy. And I think his caddy deserves a heck of a lot more than a 10% take because he talked about some shots this week that very, very realistically could have cost him not just the tournament, but a couple $1,000,000.
First in strokes gained overall, of course, but fourth in strokes gained putting, third in strokes gained around the green, second in strokes gained, seventh in strokes gained tee to green. The only thing he struggled with was he was 49th in the field in strokes gained on approach. I think that's where you saw the putter really come bail him out because, he had an opportunity to really run away with this thing at certain times. It didn't quite allow himself to do that just because he wasn't quite accurate enough with the approach shots. But there were times like earlier in the tournament where he was unbelievable on approach. But really, round 4 was kind of hovering around the same thing in the final. 36 strokes gained on approach. That's where he got a little interesting because he was 37th in strokes gained putting in the 4th round. But I mean, you watch that and you're like, really? But it's mainly just because some of the other guys when the course was really soft, they were exploding with their putter. But overall, Wyndham Clark was unbelievable in just all facets of his game. And I think he was deserving champion. I think he was the deserving winner. He played controlled. He played how we want a U.S. Open champion to play, right? Like he hit the ball in the fairway. He made putts. He limited his mistakes. And although this wasn't your classic U.S. open course, which we'll talk about later, he had that profile, I thought. And that's what I think I was happy about watching him throughout this entire week. And especially he got a little dicey at the end there in the final round, Tyson. Rory kind of was just hanging around. Scottie was lurking, but a little bit too far back. And it looked like it was a 2-horse race. But ultimately, Wyndham did just enough that got him over the hump.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I mean, unflappable. I like him just because you can tell that guy, he says, like, I kind of want to talk some shit. And when I'm feeling good, like, it helps me get into my mode. And obviously, nobody's out here kind of shitting on Rickie in the final group as far as, like, trash talk stuff goes. We could have got a pretty nice little fireworks show if it was him and Rory. But, like, the confidence is off the charts. That's the one thing I noticed, especially to shove that tee shot on 18, seemingly 80 yards off the line that he wanted to hit it. Ended up A-okay, right? Pretty much prime position, but then just puts it on the front of the green and goes, I just need a 3-putt to win this tournament. Puts it in 2, goes home. Since he switched to his new mental health approach and the sports psychologist that he's been using over the last 6 months, he's tripled his career earnings in the last 6 months versus his first 100 starts on the PGA Tour. That's saying something, because this dude is just like everybody else in golf. And what I mean by that is, like, the margin between, like, Scottie Scheffler at the top as world number 1 and a guy like Wyndham Clark, it's not very big. So when he's confident and he's swinging the ball or swinging the club well and making putts, there's just 130 guys on tour that can win. And this was his week, and he showed up, bright lights and all, and just unflappable, man.
Won the Wells Fargo earlier as well in the year.
That's elevated too, right?
Elevated event, beat Xander Schauffele by 4 shots. He got a bag there. Listen, he's a great player. Like, just watch his profile, watch how he plays. And, one of the things too is his mom, who passed away from breast cancer, she told him, go be cocky, be an athlete. That's what his caddy tells him. Be an athlete, play big, play strong. And he had that presence to him this week. Like, he could have crumbled, man. Like, I think there were certain times, the pressure did get to him a little bit, but it gets to all these guys. Like, Rory wasn't hitting perfect shots. Scottie was missing putts. Like, that's the thing. And ultimately in these type of tournaments, you have to do just enough, limit your mistakes. And that's what he did. And it's been an incredible run for him. And before we move on to the rest of the guys, I think he could be a multi type of winner every single year. Now, I don't know about majors. We'll see, but, like, he can win these events. Like, he can go low enough to win them. He can hit the ball far enough that he can play on any course, and he has a good enough approach game or good enough iron game where he can, and putting for sure, where he can compete in these ones where they're birdie fest. So I think Wyndham Clark could be one of these guys, like a multi-win-a-year type of guy.
And he just showed us that when birdies aren't necessarily very easy to be had, the course he got a great draw, right? For the first 2 days. I think if you could start it off, you'd want to be morning, afternoon, like he was, to kind of be able to put yourself in a position to win the tournament. But there was 100 other guys that got to do that too. So I think that excuse is a little whack that people are making. But, like, when there were no birdies, he made pars. And other guys were making doubles. We saw a handful of doubles. We saw a couple quads this week. No blow poles for Wyndham Clark, man.
So let's move into Rory and Scottie.
By the way, Wyndham Clark sounds like the name of a golf tournament. I saw somebody posted that somewhere, and it's the truest thing I've ever seen.
My brother and I call him Hotel, Wyndham Hotels.
Right, exactly.
Wingate by Wyndham. We're just like, yeah, hotel, had a good week. These guys, so Scottie's been in contention. Like, we know the Scottie Scheffler thing. Rory's a little bit more up and down. Like, he'll miss a cut, he'll make a cut, but he's really not in contention. Scottie's always in contention. So let's start with Rory, because this felt like this week was going to be a little bit different for him. The leaderboard set up perfectly. Like, Rickie's never done it. Wyndham Clark, we weren't sure about. Felt like Scottie maybe a little bit too far back. So it looked like it was really, hey, this is set up perfectly for Rory. And I actually thought he played well this week. I thought he played well in round 4, Tyson. And I'm looking at this thing. He's second in strokes gained overall, obviously finishing second, but first strokes gained tee to green. First strokes gained OTT. I'm drawing a blank right now.
Off the tee.
Off the tee. First gain of strokes off the tee, which is big because his accuracy has not been good for him at all this season. And then he was 15th strokes gained on approach, 25th in strokes gained around the green, 29th in strokes gained putting. But that's a good profile. Led the field in greens hit in regulation. But the problem is here, it's just like, man, if you're looking at anything that's related to Rory McIlroy, the problem is when it comes down to it, it's that fourth round. He was 57th in strokes gained putting on the field. If you look at it, he lost almost 2 strokes on the field. And this is something he just couldn't make these birdie putts, couldn't make these big putts in these moments. And it reminded me of when we had Cam Smith at St. Andrews, where Rory was playing perfectly, hitting every green in regulation, and just couldn't get over the hump. And it's just that's kind of where we're at with Rory McIlroy right now.
Well, it's a catch-22 kind of thing, because I think if you could ask him if that would be good enough to win the golf tournament, I think he'd say yes. I think he would have said yes last year at the Open. He had a couple lip outs on Sunday that certainly cost him, and obviously that became the difference between winning and taking second here. Plugging one into the side of the bunker and having to take relief, that certainly doesn't help.
Well, he got away with that because he didn't have to give a stroke.
Why is that? That was closer to the hole too, yeah?
Yeah, it was on the fringe. It's like, oh, here you go. You just plugged it into the bunker. Oh, it's embedded? Go ahead.
I was taken aback by that as well. That didn't make any sense. But, like, it's almost to the point with Rory where he's too perfect. Like, he's too much of a robot, and there's no feel left anymore. It's like everything is by the book. We make fun of Fitzpatrick or Bryson DeChambeau and these guys that play like scientists. And it is what it is at that point. But you have to have a little bit of creativity in your game. You have to have a little bit of like, fuck what the numbers say. I'm going to hit a high cut here, even though I play a draw perfectly. Because sometimes his attack angles at these pins, he's hitting at 378 yards. He is now 14 feet away, when if he just had an opposite ball flight, he could have stuck something to 6 feet. But he plays comfortably, plays to his numbers. He 2-putts, which is fine, but you have to make birdies to win these things, especially coming from second.
Yeah, and like you said, he's not a good guy at chasing, right? Like, especially when it's in reach. And, you know, we see sometimes these crazy moments like, wow, Rory just went crazy at the Masters. He went all the way up to second. And it's like, yeah, but he was never really in contention. Like, Scottie was in control the entire time last year, 2 Masters ago. And that's the type of thing, right? Like, he was leading at St. Andrews, you know, and Cam Smith catches him from behind because he's making all these putts. You know, he's right here. Literally, it's for the taking. He can't make a birdie putt. And we're at the point now, he hasn't won since 2014. A major championship. It's been a long time. I don't know if he's ever going to win one again. I mean, that may sound crazy, and people are like, "You're kidding me." We're at the point where it just may not work out for him. Like, is he too in his head? Like, he took a completely different approach this week, where he's like, "I'm not going to do any media. I don't think I, necessarily need to. I've done it a lot. I'm just going to focus on myself." And he played great. Can you really do that for every single major going forward when you're Rory McIlroy? I don't think so. And the biggest one we know about is the Masters. I don't think he'll ever win that. I don't think it suits him very well. And so then you already cut it down. He's played well at certain courses at the British before, Tyson, but we all know his high ball flight, it makes it hard if it's super windy. So then you're really looking at the PGA and the U.S. Open. But if Rory's not going to be accurate off the tee, he was this week. Also, the fairways were massively wide. If he's not going to be accurate off the tee, that limits your ability at a U.S. Open. So then you're really looking at every 4 years, you're looking at a PGA, and that can get draining at a certain point. So I don't know. I think there's major questions if Rory's going to win one again.
3 years ago, you would have probably been burned at the stake for suggesting something so ludicrous. And I think everybody's out the same. Dude, he put some ridiculous amounts of pressure on himself, which is something that you're going to expect from one of the best players in the world. But the way this dude's talked about is like, it's Tiger Woods and then it's Rory McIlroy. When in reality, like, his career is no better than Brooks Koepka's or a handful of other guys. Jordan Spieth at his peak, guys like that. And we've seen them kind of, everybody else seems to fall off a little bit where Rory just keeps sniffing around it, which makes us think that, like, of course he's going to win another one. But there is no fear when Rory McIlroy is chasing you or you're chasing Rory McIlroy. We've seen that over the last handful of seasons in a way that's untrue when you talk about, like, when Brooks is hunting or when John Rahm is coming at you at the Masters or whatever, trying to hold a lead. Those things are different. It seems like a different level of pressure. Rory has to even get into a final group this year. It would be a win for him because he's not going to do it from second.
Rory has 23 PGA Tour wins, 4 majors. Dustin Johnson has 2 majors, 24 Tour wins. So just interesting kind of little comparison there. Rory has a couple more majors. Dustin, maybe if he doesn't go to live past year and a half, he has more. He's had some injury stuff. And then you talk about Brooks. He's not going to show up on these regular tournament wins thing. He doesn't care. But like you look at his majors, it's unbelievable. Like he has more than Rory. He's been absolute star when it comes to that. So I think when we look, you're right. Like when we talk about Rory and we think about, where he is in terms of the all-time greats, it's like we want him to be up there because he's supposed to be this guy. But you look at it, he has 4 majors. Like, is that screaming Tiger Woods? I mean, that's Gary Player has 9. Gary Player is one of the all-time greatest, but we act like Rory's better than Gary Player, or we prop him up. Like just go through the list on these different guys, and we act like the gap between these other people who are still playing, like a Dustin, like a Brooks, is just no. It's Rory. It's Rory. It's like I don't know if it really is too much. And then a guy I think we've personally propped up, Tyson is Scottie. Like he's a great player. He's probably the best ball striker in the world. The numbers would suggest that. Once again, strokes gained tee degree, 3rd in the field. Strokes gained off the tee, 5th. Like he's a great driver. 7th in strokes gained on approach, 18th in strokes gained around the green. But where does it come back to bite him in the ass? He was 37th in stroke gains putting again. He can't make putts. Like, I don't know what it is with him right now. He can't. It's because it's a multitude of things. If it's a speed thing, it's a speed thing. Sometimes, that was a Colin Morikawa thing, right? For a while, when he was rolling it in, his speed was perfect. It would just drip right in. Scottie's got this whole thing where his speed's off, his read is off, and he has no confidence. It's a bad combo. Like they're hitting the cup sometimes and they're completely off other times. Like he just has no confidence, no clue what he's doing up there putting. And we say it every single time, man, if this guy could just putt a little bit, like even average, like he'd be just winning so many tournaments. But Tyson, the scary thing is now he actually gained strokes putting this week, 0.29. Now that's not a lot. And when Wyndham Clark's 1.79 compared to the rest of the field, and you're going to probably lose by 3 strokes in a tournament like this. But he's so good off the tee, so good with his irons and on his approach. It's just I don't know what it is, man. He used to be a good putter. I get my arguments with my brother all the time. We just love Scottie. He's like, no, he's a good putter. I'm like, dude, he's really not. Like he's not a good putter right now. And if he can return to that form, we'll see. But sometimes people just lose it,
I am at a 0 on the panic meter for Scottie Scheffler. This is just going to be a guy that is, if he finds his putter for 5 weeks throughout the season, he wins 5 tournaments. And that's just going to be who he is. He's always, his ball striking, his ability to limit the big mistakes, and just kind of, even when he's not playing well, he comes in at even, or he comes in at 1 under, things like that. Like this, he's just always going to be in contention. The putting can leave you, but the flip side of that, and we've seen it with, like, Justin Rose was like the 192nd best putter in the world at one point. He switches putter, switches alignment, things like that, and all of a sudden he crushes the greens. Adam Scott crushes the greens now. There's ways to fix that. There's also ways you never find it again. But this dude he's so good that with 3 holes left, down 3, like you're thinking in the back of your head, oh, there's a chance Scottie wins this. He's 194 yards out on a par 4, and you're like, he might make this again. He's also 27. So the level of concern, I think, doesn't really match his profile or his pedigree of who he is, because he's going to compete at every Masters probably for the rest of his career. He's going to compete. He might not be able to compete all the way at every single Open course as far as the British Open goes, just because I think that if he's missing fairways, like he could be screwed there. But if it's a fairway finder you want, Scottie Scheffler's the guy to hit it. If there's a strategic leave at a certain point of the green, to the left side, right side, you want to be short or long, Scottie Scheffler is the guy to get you there. He's going to win more, man. It just wasn't his week. And honestly, the putter wasn't great, and he still made a handful of putts from 25 feet that had no business being anywhere close.
I think I do have a level of concern because his body language was the worst I've ever seen in a moment like this. Like,
and his chest bumps suck, dude.
Well, he looks depressed. Like because he's done the roller coaster, right? Like the stages of grief. Like, oh, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm missing putts. What's going on? To like, yo, what the fuck? I'm missing putts. Now he's like, oh man, of course I'm missing these putts. I can't putt. That's what concerns me. Like he just knows, hey, it doesn't matter how good I hit the ball. If I can't make putts, which he thinks right now he can't make anything, like they're in trouble. And then it gets to the point where we're all talking about his putting. Like that's the conversation. Hey, what's going on with the putter? What's going on with Scottie's putting? So only Scottie could putt. And that's what's driving him the narrative right now, where he's like, okay, well, I'll just show them once I putt great. It just looks like he's lost that thing. And so I think maybe this could start to snowball. Now we'll see. Again, I think down the stretch, there's an elevated event this weekend. We got the British Open in 3 weeks or so. I don't necessarily expect him to compete there, mainly because of the putting, but I'm curious to see how the rest of this season goes. I think the expectations that we put on him, and he's won twice. Like, he won the Phoenix, which is a big tournament, and he won the Players, which is the 5th major. Like, all things considered, and when you look at how he's been sprinkled out throughout these majors, he's had a great season. It's just we expected him to win the Masters, and then we expected him to win this U.S. Open. Then he's right there, and he just can't make the putts, and now it's like, oh, man, what's going on with Scottie?
The dude's a robot, man. He's a machine. You've played golf long enough to know that that's just a circle that you're talking about. Okay, once my putter gets going, I'm going to be fine. What the hell? I can't make putts. Of course I can't make this putt. I'm making everything. That's the next step in that circle, and it comes back around, and it will. And eventually one day he won't be able to putt again, but there will be a stretch. Like, this dude is just too good to not be in contention every week, regardless if his putter's rolling or not. He's going to win Masters at some point by 6. Like, that's how good this guy is.
And it felt like this guy, Rickie, felt like that's the way he was putting early in the week. It was just a great story. We've talked about Rickie on our preview, like, hey, he's going to win at some point this season. Butch Harmon said this is the best version of Rickie Fowler we've ever seen. That's how confident he is in him. Butch Harmon's his old coach. They separated. Now they're back, and Rickie's taking his game to the next level this season compared to where he was at. And he just goes 5 under after being 10 under for the tournament in the final group. It just all fell apart for him. And you just feel so bad because he was amazing all week. And the Rickie Fowler round happened, and it had to be in front of everybody. It had to be in the most important time of the tournament. And it was brutal. It was hard to watch, to be completely honest.
Kind of felt like it was coming, though. Yeah, not just because of that it's Rickie Fowler, but anytime anybody is making strictly birdies and bogeys, you have to think that eventually, like, when the birdies aren't going in, it's going to be a long day. And Rickie had just happened to, the other shoe dropped, right? The clock ran out because there were some rolls this week where it was like, oh, Rickie Fowler's the best player I've ever seen. Like, when he had it moving, he was fantastic. But that's the thing, is when a course like this, it wasn't a typical U.S. Open course, but it was in the sense where you have birdie holes that you have to take advantage of. And then there are spots where you're going to be fine with taking a 4 on that par 3. And he got all the birdies to start. But he didn't make any strokes up on the field by getting pars other places. And he played very smart, which helped a ton through 3 days. And then he was playing smart on Sunday. And sometimes playing smart means you're going to shoot 5 over because you're not getting off the tee very well. You're putting yourself in horrible situations. He had some plug lies. He had some fried eggs and bunkers and things like that. They're just tough to deal with, man. And that's just golf. Like, if I'm Rickie Fowler, I'm still encouraged. Like, it wasn't like he pissed down his leg on 17. This was an all-day thing where he just didn't have it on Sunday. And sometimes that's okay. I don't think that's something that should kind of spiral him back to the old normal. I'm hoping this is the new normal going forward because, like, nobody swings harder than this dude. And if you want to emulate somebody and you're at home, Rickie Fowler is not a horrible guy to do it to. Those driver faces, man, they're forgiving. You swing as hard as you want, come up out your shoes. It's all good.
Lost 3 strokes on approach compared to the rest of the field in the final round. And that's what really undid him. Like, he was just so good with his irons, his wedges all week. Didn't have it. And then the putter he was great with all week as well, lost a stroke and a half compared to the field and putting. So,
and some of those
brutal.
Were this close.
Oh,
man.
Yeah. I mean, it was hard to watch. Like, he edge burners on a few, like some that just dove away at the end.
I thought he lost the tournament on Saturday night with his 40-foot birdie putt that just rolls halfway over the edge, doesn't want to go in, and then he lifts out the par putt to take bogey and come in even. I think we might be having a different conversation if that first birdie putt is a half rotation softer. I think he makes birdie there, or if he makes that par, I think that was Rickie Fowler tournament to lose. But dude, he's back, and that's all I really care about. And if you hate Rickie Fowler, fuck you.
I just hope he can actually get a major one day. Like we said about Sergio, Sergio's not as likable as Rickie for like a multitude of reasons, but we are all like, man, Sergio's going to be the best golfer that's never going to win a major. Then he eventually did win the Masters. Like maybe that could be Rickie one day. Who knows? Like he's playing good golf. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. He's won the Phoenix. He's won the Players before. He's won these big tournaments. So we'll see. It felt like this was the moment for Rickie, and when it didn't happen, you're like, oh, I don't know if it's ever going to happen. And, just like, oh, I don't know.
He was the first guy I've ever seen where it was like he's the main beneficiary of not going to live because his world ranking would have tanked, and this dude would have been fighting through qualifiers to make some of these tournaments. And so that's the flip side of it. That's something that I had on my mind this weekend.
Let's get to some other big names where we close with our thoughts on the LACC overall. I mean, obviously John Rahm. He went crazy on round 4 to get himself up to a tied for a 10th. Still would just never really was in it since the Masters. He hasn't been great. Dustin Johnson was kind of petering around that leaderboard all weekend and had a disappointing Sunday, going 2 over. Colin Morikawa again, just it's there, but he looks about as average as you can for somebody who has once had this like a meteoric rise. Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele looking for their first. Xander Schauffele's leading this freaking thing after a U.S. Open record and just goes backwards and downhill the rest of the tournament. And Patrick Cantlay's just never even there, just not even in contention ever. And then Brooks Koepka, disappointing week for him, T17. I think you can kind of look and say, well, it happens for Brooks. Like this, I didn't think this was going to be a course for him. This felt like it was way different than a grinder's course, especially when he started watching it. It's like, oh, this isn't the U.S. Open that Brooks Koepka kind of thrives in. And then kind of last one to wrap it up here for these ones, Tyson, Victor Hovland, who everybody liked coming in, loved him. He finishes even for the tournament, top 20 again, but 2 over in his final 18. Just, some interesting thoughts. I don't know if you have anything for those players or just kind of things that jumped out to you.
Well, when we did our look ahead and we gave out 2 names that we thought could win the tournament, I went with Scottie and I went with Xander. And it's kind of starting to feel to me like maybe Xander's not going to get it done. And I'm almost left alone on the island. I've been here since before the Olympics, and it got a little full when he got the gold, and everyone slowly is petering off. But it's hard to put a ton of stock into some of the finishes here this week because this is a course that pretty much none of these guys have ever been able to play before. This is a course that is unlike a lot of the courses they will ever have to play again. And so it was a tough week at a place they're not familiar with or very comfortable with. And we heard that from a lot of players. Like, what did Brooks say? This place seems like it'd be a lot of fun to play a normal round. This is not a U.S. Open tournament course. And I think that was pretty apparent watching it on TV.
So let's get into it then. I mean, it was not a U.S. Open course. I think that's fair to say. I mean, this was the lowest scoring average in the history of the tournament. And whenever you hear that, you're like, okay, I get it. Like LA people, they love their LA stuff. Like this, it looked gorgeous. Like it's a beautiful golf course. It's a beautiful area. Obviously, this is not a freaking U.S. Open course. Like these guys weren't tested. These guys weren't challenged. They weren't uncomfortable. Like the only things that the reason why they weren't blowing this thing out of the water, this course out of the water, is because they couldn't make putts. Like Tommy Fleetwood, once again ties the lowest round in round 4 in the history of a U.S. Open again, and he's just draining every single putt. Cam Smith makes a run because he's finally making putts, and the rest of the field just couldn't make putts. It was like, that's the only reason. Everybody else is on the green with birdie putts. They're just missing them all.
The fairways were huge. The greens were massive. Everyone spent the entirety of the tournament talking about how the rough was going to eat these golf balls up, and if you missed your spots on certain fairways and you ended up left or whatever, you're dead, right? The ball hardly ever disappeared.
Never.
Like there were some where they would say, like, oh, it's good though, it's on grass, and then they'd say it for the next guy, and then for the next guy, and then and to the point where that almost looked like somewhat of a bailout area in a tournament where that's supposed to be a killer. There's no signature hole here. There's no trouble on 18 to really find yourself in to lose a golf tournament, which I think is a kind of a big deal for a major, especially Wyndham Clark at any other U.S. Open venue throughout the last 20 years is in huge trouble for that drive that he hits on 18. And this one, he just gets a little 80-yard shot to the front of the green and 2 putts, and it's all gravy and it's all okay. Dude, this was just an exercise in golf exclusivity and just being like, This is a $250,000 initiation fee. We haven't had to pay property taxes since 1978, or we've been stuck at the same length or whatever. 9,000 general admission tickets for the public. 9,000. And then NBC spent the entire broadcast basically funneling in a blimp noise to our ears. It was horrible.
The plane
horrible
thing. Yeah,
experience.
I was like, is there just what is happening here?
Scottie Scheffler holds out from 170 yards or whatever it is for eagle to really put himself into contention on Saturday, and it sounded like somebody made a good putt at a practice round at the Masters. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's got it. Like, first of all U.S. Opens, I mean, played either at Torrey or Pebble. Like, that's it. Like, nothing else. And then send them all to the East Coast or like somewhere in the Midwest and make the actual hard courses where there could be wind. You know what I mean? Like actual difficult courses. Like,
yeah, but we had a marine layer.
And I hear the exclusivity thing. It's not like golf hasn't pretended that's what it is the entire time. So I see people like, whoa, it's such an exclusive thing. I'm like, that's the sport. Like golf is. It's not like they really ingratiate.
This felt like a little different level, though. This was like we're taking pride in the fact that like none of you will ever be able to sniff this place.
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
we go play Torrey.
Yeah. It was disappointing. I mean, the course is gorgeous. Like I said, I think a PGA Championship there would have been great. Like, it'd have been fun. I think you could have set it up like in a different way where we could have seen maybe some more fireworks, Tyson, a little bit lower. Like, this is around 15 under, 14 under, and it's a PGA Championship. I don't think anybody has any qualms with it, but it's a 10 under U.S. Open course, and we're like, it's not that. Like, it shouldn't be that. This should be at freaking 5 under, 4 under, and people are sweating that they're going to go four over in their final round because the USGA just hates them and doesn't want to see them ever make a putt.
Well, the other part is, so we have a 300-yard par 4, and we're all excited about that. Because typically, if you have that in a U.S. Open, you're basically screwed unless you can hit the ball where it needs to go. At a place like LACC, they could miss short, they could miss right, and they could miss long. At that point, like, you're just kind of hitting to a target, chipping up and making birdie. This is supposed to be one of the harder holes on the course. Your 81-yard par 3 that we were all excited about. How are these guys going to play this? They shoved the pin in the point with a backstop behind it so all these dudes can just hit in the hill and suck this thing to 4 feet. I mean,
yeah,
there was very few times this course showed its teeth. And kind of, this is one of the only tournaments in golf where, like, the Masters is this way and the U.S. Open's supposed to be this way, where the course is the star. And it's what can these guys do on this course? Whereas instead it was like, just look at the ball striking of all these great players and look at the putting and the approach shots. And that's fine for the other 40 events before this. But when it gets down to nut cutting time, it is supposed to be, this thing is going to eat your lunch, so be perfect. And instead it was, hit it wherever you want, go find it, hit it again.
And I think that's the most disappointing thing. But listen, I mean, we had a great tournament betting-wise. Tyson did clean up Sunday with Wyndham Clark. I actually had, for once, a great, my best placement market of the entire tournament, of the entire season so far. Went 5 out of 6 on top 20s and 40s. So we had a good job. So hopefully we can continue to have that roll into the Travelers Championship this weekend. Another elevated event where they're going to go from LA over to Connecticut for a staple. We have data on this course. We're going to have an idea. I'm excited for this one, Tyson. So tell them where they can find all of our picks.
They're in the Chalkboard app. It's on the App Store. It's on Google Play, wherever you download your app. I Said What I Said presents the Roundtable Bets. It's Brad, myself, a handful of other people in there. We're just trying to get it to grow. Just throwing bets down, whatever you guys are playing. We're more than, like, we're happy. We want to hear what you guys have going on. And if you don't like what we have thrown in there, then go ahead and fade it. But we have the NBA draft is coming quickly. So we have very little time to kind of get those things in there, but that's traditionally been a pretty good one for us. Win totals, all that stuff is going to come out for the NFL and the NCAA football season in there. We're in the dog days, man. So this is when grinding time really becomes important, because it's fun to hit minus 125 single bets. It's more fun to hit them at plus 700 before the season starts.
And in the meantime, you can always like, subscribe, and share the show. Follow us on our social media channels, whatever the case, whatever you want to do. But as long as you guys like try to help us out, smash the like button. If you're watching us on YouTube, that really helps us become more discoverable. Like, rate, review, whatever the case may be. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, if you have a question for us, give us a rating. Ask it in there. We'll answer it on the show. And obviously, our social media channels, actually, we made it easy on you. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok is super easy at ISWIS_pod for all three. We'll be back with a bunch of NBA news. We're not doing the NBA draft stuff yet. We have a ton of other offseason stuff to talk about as free agency is kicking on. We have a big trade for Tyson's Suns. So we'll talk all of that in detail. We'll speak to you guys then. Peace.